This envelope changed everything. My mother slid it across the linen tablecloth, her diamond ring catching the light. My sister leaned in phone ready, pretending it was a moment worth remembering. The restaurant fell quiet. The string quartet hesitated mid-note. Inside that envelope wasn't money or a card. It was a disownment letter, signed by all of them. My graduation present. I folded it once, twice, and stood up. No words, no scene. Just silence and the weight of paper in my hand. They thought they'd written my ending. They didn't realize they'd just started their own. Stay until the end. You'll see how silence rewrites everything. Growing up, I learned early that love in our house came with performance metrics. My father, Charles Bennett, measured worth in return on investment. My mother, Diane, measured it in appearances. My sister, Avery, just happened to be the perfect balance of both. At dinner parties, I was always introduced last. Avery is a senior associate in New York. My mother would beam her hand, resting proudly on my sister's shoulder. Then her tone would soften almost apologetically. And this is Taylor. She's still studying. The same pause, the same polite smile, as if I were a late project still waiting for approval. Guests would nod, glance at me briefly, then redirect their attention to the champagne. I learned to smile back. Quietly, predictably. Our dining room always smelled of cedar polish and expectation. The chandelier above the crystal table threw fractured light across my glass, scattering reflections that never quite settled. I used to count them tiny broken halos while my father discussed markets and mergers, and my mother rehearsed gratitude to donors who mistook vanity for virtue. Avery thrived in that world. She learned how to glide between conversations, when to laugh softly, when to tilt her head just enough to look engaged. I studied her like a science. Every gesture earned approval. Every pause was calibrated. I, on the other hand, worked nights at a cafe near campus. The espresso machine hissed louder than any conversation at home. There, people didn't care about last names or legacies. They just wanted their orders right and their names spelled correctly. I liked that. It was measurable. Clean, honest. One Sunday, after a long shift, I came home to find Avery sitting at the kitchen counter, her laptop open, my father pouring wine. "We were just talking about you," he said, swirling the glass. "Avery thinks you're wasting your time behind a coffee counter." Avery didn't look up. "It's not wasting, Dad. It's character building." Her tone was light, but the edge was there, sharp enough to slice through the polite air. I laughed softly, pretending it didn't sting. "I'm funding my tuition," I said. My father shrugged. "Degrees don't pay bills, Taylor. Numbers do. Remember that." I wanted to remind him that I understood numbers better than anyone in that house, that I could build systems, track variables, model outcomes, but his attention was already drifting back to Avery. After that night, I stopped trying to join their conversations. I just started watching, observing, collecting data in the quiet way that made sense to me. Still, there were moments I thought maybe things would change, like when I earned a national research scholarship. I sent them the email attached, the press clipping, waited for something. My mother replied 6 hours later. "So proud of you, sweetheart. We have a gala tonight. Can we post about it tomorrow?" They never did. That was the day I understood something simple but permanent in my family: attention was a currency, and I was always the unpaid intern in their empire. I remember the sound of the crystal glasses that night, how they clinked perfectly in rhythm, as if the house itself celebrated my invisibility. That was the night I learned my place in this family, somewhere between silence and proof. 2 days before graduation, a message arrived in the family group chat, a reservation link, Maison Lumière, the same restaurant my mother booked for every milestone that wasn't mine. The message was simple: pre-graduation dinner for Taylor. Dress appropriately. No emoji, no warmth, just a formality wrapped in control. I clicked the link. My name wasn't even on the guest list. The host greeting read, "The Bennett family, Charles, Diane, Avery." That omission wasn't a mistake. It was a statement. An hour later, Avery texted privately, "Don't overthink it. It's just formatting." Formatting. The word echoed in my head. That was how they saw me, a variable easily deleted. That night, I sat at my desk, the city lights flickering against the window like static. My inbox glowed with unread notifications from investors, classmates, professors. Achievements. Milestones, acknowledgments. None of it carried weight when the people who taught you your worth still measured you in silence. I scrolled through our old family photos, vacations, holidays, fundraisers, my mother's flawless posture, my father's rehearsed smiles, Avery's practiced charm, and me always at the edge of the frame, half lit, half seen. It wasn't new. It was just the first time I saw it without hope. The next morning, I received an email from the university confirming my speech slot at the commencement ceremony. My mentor, Dr. Alvarez, had nominated me for the Young Leader in Technology Award. She wrote, "This is your moment, Taylor. Own it quietly." Quietly. That word felt like a lifeline, something solid in a world made of glass. I closed the laptop and took a long breath. The sunlight cut through the blinds in clean, geometric lines. I started to notice how precise everything around me had become: the coffee mug aligned with the notebook, the papers stacked by color, the clock ticking at a steady rhythm. That was the first moment I realized my life wasn't chaotic. It was organized, just not by them anymore. I smiled, the kind of smile you wear when the proof has already been collected. The night before the dinner, the city hummed under the weight of summer rain. My apartment windows were fogged at the corners, the glass trembling with each passing train. Inside, everything was in order. Papers aligned, screens glowing soft blue. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, the smell cutting through the storm outside, sharp and grounding. My fingers tapped the keyboard in rhythm with the rain. Each line of data, every document filed, was another quiet act of rebellion. I had stopped trying to explain myself months ago. Explanations were for people who wanted to be understood. Records were for people who intended to be remembered. So I kept records. Every scholarship form, every award letter, every line of code from my project Routeflow. What began as a small research assignment had evolved into something real, a data platform that helped small logistics companies optimize delivery routes. Ethan handled analytics. Maya shaped the user interface, and I, the barista with an MBA, had written the core algorithm. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. The breakthrough came one early morning, long before sunrise, when I ran a simulation that cut fuel costs by 12%. I remember leaning back, staring at the numbers. Proof. Tangible, undeniable proof. By the time the university's startup symposium arrived, Routeflow was ready. My professor, Dr. Alvarez, stopped me before I went on stage. "You don't need to sell yourself," she said. "Just show them how it works. Let the data speak." It did. When the presentation ended, applause erupted, polite at first, then real. Among the crowd stood a man in a tailored gray suit, Nathan Cole, CEO of Northbridge Logistics. He approached afterward, his tone, measured his interest, genuine. "You've built something scalable," he said, studying the graphs. "But more than that, something fair." Fair. A word I hadn't heard in years. We met twice after that. The third time, he slid a folder across the table. Inside was a letter of intent. Northbridge wanted to acquire Routeflow for $6.2 million, plus a director-level position for me post-graduation. I didn't sign immediately. I read every clause, every subline. I wanted to make sure the system I'd built, the one built from silence, not privilege, stayed intact. When I finally signed, it wasn't triumph I felt. It was balance. From that point, I started building my own archive. Digital copies of every document time-stamped and encrypted. Transaction receipts, licensing records, payment confirmations. The kind of paper trail that doesn't just tell a story, it seals it. The night I received the final transfer confirmation, I printed the letter. The sound of the paper sliding out of the printer was cleaner than applause. That's when I opened the family group chat for the first time in months. The most recent message was from my mother, a photo of Avery at some law firm gala captioned, "Proud doesn't begin to cover it." I typed a simple reply, "Graduation dinner confirmed? I'll be there." No emojis, no explanation. After that, I cleaned the apartment the way I always did before major moments. Every item had a place, every line symmetry. On the desk, my offer letter, my degree folder, and a small envelope I'd kept since childhood, a faded birthday card my mother once gave me with, "To my little dreamer," written on it. I placed the new documents beneath it, the ink fresh, the paper heavy. Midnight came quietly. I closed my laptop, poured the last of the coffee, and watched the city lights ripple across the river. I thought about that upcoming dinner, their smiles, the cameras, the performance. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. They would bring their own letter, thinking it would define me. What they didn't know was that I'd already signed something far more permanent, my independence. I fell asleep with that thought. The rain had stopped. The silence that followed felt almost ceremonial. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The first light caught the corner of the desk, gleaming off the silver clip holding the contracts together. I touched the paper, lightly grounding myself. I didn't dress for them. I dressed for records, clean blazer-tied hair, neutral tones. The kind of look that doesn't beg to be seen but demands to be remembered. Before leaving, I aligned my coffee cup next to the laptop exactly 1 inch from the edge. Habit order proof. I locked the door behind me. The streets of Chicago were still damp reflections stretching across the asphalt. My reflection looked back from the window of a passing cab, calm, composed, someone I recognized for the first time. When I arrived near Maison Lumière, I stopped in front of the glass doors. Inside, I could already see the faint shimmer of chandeliers, my mother's silhouette, the familiar tilt of Avery's head as she adjusted her phone camera. I breathed once, steady. They thought tonight was their stage. They had no idea the script had already been rewritten, signed, sealed, time-stamped. This time, I wasn't walking into their performance. I was walking into proof. The hostess smiled when she saw me. "Bennett party?" she asked. Her tone was professional, but I caught the flicker of surprise when she realized my name wasn't on the reservation list. I nodded anyway. "Yes," I said. "They're expecting me." Inside, the air smelled of truffle butter and expensive indifference. My family occupied the corner table under a halo of chandelier light. My mother waved as if this were a reunion, not an execution. Avery lifted her phone slightly, framing the shot. "Taylor, darling." My mother said, her voice dipped in sugar. "We have something special for you." A server appeared, setting a pristine white envelope by my plate. My father cleared his throat, rehearsed authority filling the pause. "It's time we all move forward," he said. My mother smiled wider. "From all of us," she added. Avery's camera caught everything, the envelope sliding across linen, my expression unreadable. I opened it slowly. The paper was heavy, embossed legal. "We, the undersigned, hereby release and relinquish all familial obligations and ties with Taylor Bennett." It was signed by each of them, initials perfect loops practiced. There, it was my graduation gift. The table watched, waiting for a scene. Maybe a tear, maybe a raised voice. But I'd already lived the real drama. I folded the paper once, twice, then placed it carefully beside my coffee spoon. "Thank you," I said. My tone was even deliberate. Avery blinked. "You're thanking us," I met her gaze, "for the closure." The air tightened thin as glass. My father shifted in his chair. My mother's hand hovered over her wine. Avery lowered her phone, just slightly unsure what she was filming anymore. "Taylor," my mother said softly, "you don't have to make this harder." But I was already reaching into my bag. I pulled out a folder the same neutral gray as the suit Nathan had worn the day he handed me the contract. I placed it on the table and opened it toward them. Inside was the acquisition announcement. The North Bridge letterhead gleamed under the light. Beneath it, my name, Director of Data Operations. Root Flow Integration Lead. For a moment, no one spoke. The quartet in the background shifted songs, unaware they were scoring a funeral. Avery leaned forward, reading faster. "This is yours." "Yes." My father frowned, the kind he reserved for bad investments. "You sold it, I built it." "Then I sold it," I said quietly. "The deal closed last week." My mother tried to recover her composure. "We didn't know." "I know," I said. It was the first time I'd ever seen my mother truly speechless. Avery's phone was still in her hand, but the red light was off now. My father reached for his wine glass, but his grip trembled slightly enough for the stem to click against the marble. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. I simply stood. "You can keep the letter," I said, sliding their disownment papers back across the table. "I already have my own." The irony landed quietly, perfectly. Behind me, I heard Avery whisper something, maybe a plea, maybe a curse, but I didn't turn back. As I reached the doorway, the restaurant's soft piano filled the silence they left behind. I paused, one hand on the frame, the city lights reflecting in the glass ahead of me. In that reflection, I saw them still sitting there, surrounded by the world they'd built, bright, polished, empty. Outside, the air was colder than I expected. It smelled like rain and freedom. I checked my phone, new messages from Northbridge, notifications from press outlets already picking up the acquisition. Proof, all time-stamped. The envelope in my hand felt lighter now, just paper and ink, nothing more. They had given me their silence years ago. Tonight, I returned it perfected. The night air off Lake Michigan felt sharper than usual, clean enough to rinse everything that clung to me from inside that restaurant. The city pulsed beyond the glass towers, indifferent and alive. I walked without rush, the sound of my heels folding into the hum of passing cars. Each step carried less weight. When I reached my apartment, the sky had thinned into early dawn. Pale light spilled through the blinds, painting quiet patterns on the floor. I set the envelope on the counter next to my framed degree. Their letter looked small beside the new one, Northbridge's offer, embossed, final, signed. 2 documents, 2 versions of my name. One they erased, one they couldn't. I made coffee, as always, pouring it slow, steady. The cup clicked softly against the table. That sound had become my pulse, measured, controlled, alive. I didn't reread their letter. It had already served its purpose, a timestamp marking the exact moment I stopped asking to belong. Now it sat behind glass flattened between achievements that couldn't be deleted. My phone vibrated once. A text from Avery. "We didn't mean it like that." "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a while. The dots blinked, disappeared, blinked again. Then I turned the phone face down. Some messages aren't meant to be answered, they're meant to echo into silence. The light shifted warmer. Outside, the city stretched awake delivery vans, joggers, the rhythm of another ordinary day. I opened the window, letting the air in. Somewhere below, a train screeched metal against metal, raw and honest. In the reflection on the glass, I saw a woman who no longer needed to explain why she was standing there alone. I picked up their letter one last time, folded it neatly, and slid it behind the frame of my degree. Not hidden, just placed in order. Evidence of what was proof of what changed. The air in the room steadied. My shoulders did too. Silence at last didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Revenge didn't sound like victory. It sounded like calm breath in a quiet room. The kind of silence you choose, not the kind forced on you. Families break loudly. Peace rebuilds quietly. They wrote me out of their story, but I became the footnote they'll never erase. Some stories don't end with forgiveness, they end with clarity. If you've ever been the quiet one in the room, the one everyone underestimated, this one's for you. Watch till the end, because sometimes silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. And the calm that follows, that's what real freedom sounds like.